Shalom, welcome. Today we're going to take a deeper look at the topic that we started in our newsletter called an uncommon rest. What do we mean by an uncommon rest? Well, we need to look at some of the great holy traditions like the Vedas and the Semitic traditions of the Torah and the Tao and Zen, and we can see that this notion of the importance of rest physically, spiritually, and emotionally for us is brought out in all of these holy traditions. If we look at our tradition in the Torah, it's mentioned frequently, every other page. Take a rest, take a rest. The Sabbath day, a sanctified day of sanctified rest. It's an uncommon rest. So what happens is over time, we find ourselves in a situation where we're always striving. The striving begins when we're very young. Even now that their pregnant mothers are having tape recordings of mathematics and phonics while they're pregnant going on for their children. They're striving to have their children be the best they can be in school and be the best they can be in sports. And then we graduate and we want to be the best we can be in college and the best we can be in our jobs, and we're constantly striving. The striving even takes us into what were so-called our times of rest. On the weekends, we're striving to do landscaping, and we're striving to have better property than our neighbors, and we're cutting our lawns and moving our rocks and getting rid of the weeds and making sure our kids the best in Little League. All this striving is going on. And we think to ourselves, well, it's for the good of my family or for the good of my community. And even though I'm striving, the more I strive, the more I can donate, the more I can give to charity, the more I can help society. And these things aren't bad. These things are good. But when there's no balance with rest, they become detrimental instead of becoming positive. And we begin to hurt ourselves spiritually, physically, and emotionally, because we're always so busy and we're always so stressful. And then at the end of the day, we sort of collapse into a state of necessary rest. And that's not really the uncommon rest that the holy traditions talk about. So if we go to the Torah and we see in the Torah it says, have a sanctified day, have a day that is set aside. When I say sanctified, what does that mean? It means that it's uncommon, it's different, it's set aside as special. And it commands this day should be a day of rest, a special day, a sanctified rest. And it's not just one day a week. Every time there is an instruction about a holiday, it's accompanied with, you shall rest on that day. So we have Passover, it says, will not eat leavened bread, and you'll rest. And we have Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur, you shall not eat, and you shall also rest. So we have the Sabbath day, we have all these holidays, and commanding over and over and over again about this special day of uncommon rest. So when something is made holy, and the word in Hebrew is Kadesh, so when it is made holy, it is separated and made uncommon. And we have this experience in our lives that those things are special to us. If we have a special chair or a special couch or a special sweater, we know that when we put on that sweater or we sit in that couch or we play that special guitar, it has a certain meaning and a feeling to us. When we have a day that we set aside as special, a day for an uncommon rest, it feels different than the other days. Now, in none of this instruction in the Torah does it say you should pray all these times or you should read and study all these things. The only accompanying instruction is that you should have this sort of uncommon rest. So we look for hints as to what this uncommon rest might be. In Psalm 46:10, it says, be still to know that I am God. And the book Song of Songs. In Hebrew, it's called Shir HaShirim. It's a beautiful example. It's a love story, but it's a love story about the meditative experience. And the meditative experience gives us this uncommon rest. So in this love story, it's about union between lovers, but it's not meant to be about a man and a woman in terms of lovers. It's meant to be about the union of our human consciousness with the divine consciousness deep within us. And it's about that state of surrender where we stop striving. We finally have an uncommon rest. And if we go to chapter 5, verse 2, it begins with, I was asleep, but my heart within me was awake. And that's a beautiful description of what we experience as meditators. So what happens when we begin to meditate? We begin to surrender. We stop striving. Inwardly, we begin to surrender and not use that part of our brain that strives and figures things out. And suddenly, our bodies get deeper and deeper relaxed. We find more restfulness. And then our bodies, the metabolic rate slows down even deeper than it does in deep sleep. But what's happening? Within us, our heart is awake. So our awareness is actually expanding while our bodies are sleeping. This is the uncommon rest that we talk about. So all of this rest is absolutely necessary to be healthy, spiritually, physically, and emotionally. And we shouldn't mistake the notion that striving is bad. I know I'll get some calls saying, oh, striving, and we wouldn't have electricity if people weren't striving and doing all these things. This is important to do both. It would be wrong to just have uncommon rest 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Just as wrong as it would be to constantly strive without having rest. So what do we need? We need a balance to be healthy, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. And my contention is it's getting worse and worse in our society where we do not have that balance, where striving is rewarded and that uncommon rest is not rewarded. So we have a situation where people are constantly striving. I live in the Rocky Mountains. It's a beautiful, peaceful place. I have many friends and family that come here. We have this beautiful UMI building, place to come and rest, meditate. So people come, they come visit me, it's beautiful, and they come and they have a long list. Where am I going to go? I'm going to go to Brainerd Lake. I'm going to go to Estes Park. I'm going to climb a 14er. I'm going to do all these things. And I look at this list and I start to laugh. And there's no rest even in their vacations. Even folks get into the consciousness of striving, I'll call it striving consciousness. When they want to learn how to meditate, they'll say, oh, meditation was good, but I had this experience where I couldn't get rid of my thoughts. Or I couldn't find that space where there were no thoughts. We don't get rid of anything in meditation. We don't strive to do anything in meditation. We surrender in our meditation. This is a key element. I can't think of a more important teaching that we're getting that uncommon rest in our meditation. Our bodies go into a deep state of rest while our awareness grows inwardly because we're in a state of surrender. We're in a state of non-judgment, and we're not striving. We're not trying to figure things out. We're really fully engaged in each moment as it occurs to us. I remember when I was in sales, when I was much younger, I had a sales manager who was a very nice guy, and he was one of those people who really strove and did well in his job. And you could see the stress was taking a toll on him. And he decided to buy a greenhouse and put it in his backyard and grow flowers. And at first this seemed really good because he seemed like there was a little bit more balance in his life. He had some peace from being in his greenhouse and growing flowers. He grew orchids. But then as he started growing the orchids, he wanted to grow the best orchids that he could grow. And he started selling them. And then he became part of these clubs where they had competitions for who had the best orchids. And I could see how his habit of striving worked its way into the peaceful part of his life. So we need to balance this striving and no striving. He continued to strive both at home and in business, and he did really well until he had a heart attack and died at his desk. And I knew at that moment the importance of this beautiful technique that I had been given, this uncommon rest, and how it created a balance in my life. And at that time, I knew I had to also share this technique with others because it was so important to our physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being. So what am I saying? I'm saying that we need to have as much importance put in our lives on resting as we do on striving. We want to be successful, that's a good thing. We have all the right reasons to be successful. But even with all the right reasons, our striving without the balance of resting will create damage to us physically, spiritually, and emotionally. But if we have the striving and an equal amount of uncommon rest and balance, then we lead a life of fulfillment. Then we lead a healthy, spiritually, physically, and emotional life. So, the importance of regular meditation to create this balance can't be overstressed. And it's not like we're striving in our meditation, we're surrendering in our meditation. We're in a state of non-judgment. And then we go out and we enter into activity in a more clear frame of mind. So we can actually accomplish more with doing less because we're wiser, where we have more clarity. One of the most beautiful things that happened to me as a teacher of meditation was one of my students, an engineer, was going through some trouble in his life. I taught him only a few months ago. And he came to me to learn how to meditate. And his young daughter was having some illness, and he was very, very stressed. So I taught him how to meditate, and immediately he understood. He let go of that striving, and he surrendered in his meditation. And after a month or so of meditating, he came back to me and he said, you know, I really love this meditation because before it, I felt like there was no space in my head. And now that I'm meditating, there's space. So, with his regular practice of meditation, he was able to let go of that stress and strain and still have a balance in his life. And that experience to him was more valuable than many other experiences that he's had in his life. And to me, as his teacher, it was very gratifying. So I'm going to keep repeating this as I teach throughout the years until I leave this body. It'll be redundant. The regular practice of this uncommon rest is what's necessary to create balance, fulfillment, and enlightenment. So teaching today is, let's put as much importance on this uncommon rest as we do on our striving and accomplishments in the field of activity. Balance between rest and activity. So we don't think of the rest as just, oh, maybe I'll get to it. Just like we wouldn't think of, oh, maybe I'll get to our job, or maybe I'll get to my studies. The studies and the job are very important. The uncommon rest is very important. So each day, 2 times a day, we dive in, we have the uncommon rest, we go out and strive and become who we need to be in activity, and then we come back and rest. Rest, activity, rest, activity. But our kavana, our intention should be, both are equally important. So I ask you to examine that, and it will come back to regular practice. Setting aside weekends for deeper practice. Come to the UMI circling weekends. And then we can even have maybe once a year, longer than a weekend, for a week we rest. And then we find that we're having a balanced life of rest and activity. Thank you very much. Shalom.